What's up, guys? Welcome to the Strive podcast, the podcast that's inspiring you guys to find your level of mastery. Guys, in today's episode, we talk to a very, very, very special guest, someone who's a close friend of Sel and mine. It was Luke Mathers. He is an expert when it comes to all things stress and also about Curious Habits, which is the book that we're promoting on today's podcast. We're not talking about any sponsors. We're talking about this book that you guys need to know about. It's Luke's new book, Curious Habits, and you can find it at www.lukemathers.com.au or on Amazon. We highly encourage you to go and check that out. I know you guys are going to get a lot out of this episode. Well, I hope you do. So let's get right into it. Let's go. Luke Mathers, welcome to the Strive podcast.
Nice to be back.
It's so good to have you here. I woke up this morning and I was really excited that, we'd be able to sit here and have a chat to you today.
Good skills, man. It's good to be here. Good to see both of you.
There's a few people, people would sort of relate to this that are listening, that sometimes you have people in your life who, when you sort of engage with them and talk with them, they give you energy, and then others might sort of zap you of some energy. And you're certainly someone that I know I can speak on Sel's behalf too, gives us a lot of good energy. So
same when I catch up with both of you two. It's always fun. A little love fest going on here, isn't it? It's great.
It's what it was going to be, and I know that we're going to fill our listeners and viewers with some good vibes today and give them some really amazing, valuable information. And I'm so excited for people to learn who you are and meet you for the first time. And for those who have heard of you before, or maybe listened to our old podcast, or have seen you, in other ways, I'm excited for them to meet you for the first time.
Cool. It's going to be fun.
So for those who haven't met you before, we've known you for quite a few years now, which is really exciting to think back. And over the years, we've kind of been you've been building your identity post your corporate career and running businesses, very successful businesses, and you're transitioning into this new role. Over the years as what I call sort of like a performance coach. But what do you call yourself?
I call you the happiness guru.
Is that what you call him?
That's what I've.
Cool.
That's how I've tried to sell him to other people.
That's cool.
Because every time I've told someone, I used that originally, and then everyone's just like performance. Then they get like
worried. Sport.
Yeah, they think of it in like almost like it's a vehicle. Like what's he gonna do to me? Is he gonna manipulate my body or make me faster and all this? I'm just like, he'll make you happier. So I just refer to him as the happiness guru.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'll take all of them. Most of those sort of when you start trying to put yourself in, most of them just make me vomit in my mouth a little bit. Like the whole life coach, mindset coach, performance, happiness guru. Happiness guru, I'll take that all day long. But let's face it, most of us are going to perform better if we're happy.
Yeah.
So if we can work out what makes us happy and get really clear on that stuff, it's going to be better. It's actually quite weird. I spent 27 years testing people's eyes. I used to be an optometrist, and it's a really weird thing to think. I spent all of that time, and now what I'm doing is helping people find a vision of themselves that they actually really like and they want to do, and that they're going forward because they want to do it, not because they've had it thrust upon them, or not because someone said you have to do it, but to do it because this aligns with who I want to be.
That's cool.
And I reckon if you can have that alignment, you get that happiness. And if you achieve goals, great. If you don't, at least I'm going in that right direction.
Yeah. I love you sort of talking about that story as an optometrist, that you're asking someone if their eyes are okay like 10,000 times or whatever.
Yeah, I've asked which one's clearer, this one or that one, 6.5 million times.
No.
If you think your job's boring. But it's not. I also got to meet really nice people, and we opened Specsavers, so we had 100 stores in 100 days. So if you look at it was the biggest retail rollout in Australia's history. So if you've ever opened a retail store, you guys know what it's like to start something new. 100 stores in 100 days was just phenomenal, and it was really stressful, but geez, it was fun.
Yeah,
it was just like, we had a big team, and it was awesome. But to be able to be part of that and to look back and see what they are now, they're in nearly 50% of the market, and they've been like the Uber or whatever it is of optics.
Yeah,
they've been Uber, Netflix, all of those put together for optics, and to have been part of that was pretty cool.
Amazing.
I think the thing that I naturally, what you said is so true about the performance or life coach, where it conjures up images to me of everything I dislike because you see so many people taken for a ride and you hear someone saying you can do it, and then they're sitting there all doing this motivational chant. You're like, that is such bullshit, like that level of stuff. But then obviously I met you through multiple different people, and one, you were successful yourself, but the thing that I probably gravitated towards the most was success is probably an understatement of what you achieved with Specsavers, but you moved away from that for a life of happiness. And most people attach happiness to money, fame, power, could be a lot of different things. Your happiness was sought elsewhere, and you found that doing what you're doing now. And I think a lot of people spend their whole lives trying to find what actually makes them happy, which is sad, but you found yours, and now you're trying to help others find theirs, which I think is probably one of the coolest thing anyone could really do with their time.
Happiness is almost one of those things that the more you search for it, the probably harder it is to find. It kind of just comes your way, I reckon, when you're in alignment. I love that line from Seneca. It's, a couple of thousand years old, from back in old Stoic Roman times, and he says, if you don't know what port you're heading for, no wind helps.
True.
Right. And the hassle is that a lot of people don't really know. They've had these ideas of success thrust upon them, and a lot of it turns out, if I have the big house, if I have the flash car, if I have all the money, then I'm successful. And one of the things I talk about in my new book, Curious Habits, is that I call it top of the mountain syndrome, that we all think, when I get this, when combat's the biggest drink in the world, and when all of that, when these things happen, then I'm going to be happy. And I think it is sort of trying to put happiness on the other side of a horizon, that I'm going to swim to happiness, and the horizon just keeps moving further and further away. So what can you do that's in alignment with who you want to be, and then have some fun along the way, and all of a sudden you look around and go, oh shit, that was pretty cool. I've got some good stuff out of that.
Do you see it's one of those situations though where you can tell someone that money is not going to bring them happiness, but it's like that for a lot of people, they need to learn that themselves. And I know I've experienced that too, where you're just like constantly chasing to get to a financial goal. And then when you get there, you realize it doesn't really mean anything.
Well, but then it means something above a certain amount.
Yeah.
And they've done the science on this. University of Melbourne did a great study that worked out that once you have $120,000 a year, your amount of happiness you get from more money just levels off. It doesn't actually make any difference. It's almost a bit Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that once you get above a certain point, if you don't have any money to pay the rent, you're about to get kicked out, and you can't put petrol in your car, and you can't feed your kids, money's going to make a massive difference to your happiness. All right. But above a certain point, it doesn't. So a lot of the time, I think we think we need a lot of money to have the flash car and the big house and all of that sort of stuff. And a lot of the time we're spending money on, shit we don't need to impress people we don't like and buy crap. And so why don't we have a look and sort of see what actually brings us joy? Because there's a lot of habits that we have. I talk a lot about that in the new book. There's a lot of habits that we have that the reward from it gets taken away. There's a thing in psychology called reward invariance. So you might do something and you got something good out of it the first 20 times you did it. Once you've done something enough times, you'll continue to do it even when the reward gets taken away. And I think some of those, we've got to get a bit curious about some of the things we do and see whether they're actually serving us or not.
There was something that you were speaking about with us off air, where we were talking about enjoying the journey, and the fact that we always push the goalposts further and further away, or they keep getting further and further away. And it's so important to sort of like live, get some present. Get some presents and like enjoy the journey. Talk to us about that. We referenced it to fighters specifically, cutting weight. And that's the goal, or like having the fight, or whatever it might be. But
I think whenever you use the words, if and then, if such and such happens, then I'll be whatever. I think that's always my alarm bells start going off. Then that if I pay my house off, if I make rent this week, if I make weight for a big fight or something, then I'll be happy. And I reckon it's a slippery slope, because I remember looking around, and all of the stuff that I do now all started from going and seeing my GP. This is like when was stress Teflon, like 5-6 years ago.
Yep.
Went and saw my GP and said, look, I'm not quite getting into it. I'm sort of still doing all the things I like to do, and it's kind of good, but I'm just a bit like not just languishing, not bad, not everything was all right. I had the biggest optometry practice in the country, was making lots of money. My wife was happy, my daughter was okay, everything was good. But I was just languishing. And I went and saw the GP, and the GP talked to me and he asked probably 3 or 4 really not very insightful questions, and then gave me a prescription for a SSRI. So he gave me an antidepressant medication. All right. I live in Lukeland, man. Lukeland's awesome. It's unicorns fart rainbows there, and the world's an amazing place. And to then get a doctor say, okay, I think you might be a bit depressed, was like, holy shit, what's going on here? But I took the tablets for about 3 weeks, and actually sort of got a bit of a pep in my step and went all right. And so the nerd in me came rushing to the surface, and I went, well, why am I taking these tablets to give me serotonin? Why don't I work out how you get serotonin and put more of that into my world? And that's kind of what I did. Talked to the doctor, said, look, I'm not going to take these anymore. I'm going to put my heart and soul back into whatever I'm doing. And I think that was top of the mountain syndrome. I'd got to everything I wanted to do. I had all the money I really needed.
Yep.
You can always make more, but I had all the money I needed. My business was as good as it could have been. Everything was okay, and you're just languishing. I think it goes back to that old Chinese proverb of, the man who likes to walk will go further than the man that's looking for a destination. Mm-hmm. And I think too many of us spent too much time looking for a destination.
Amazing. And what are some of the principles you started to use and identify for yourself to get that serotonin for yourself, and obviously transition from using the antidepressant medication to getting those benefits yourself?
Well, it was a pretty quick transition because I wasn't really on them for very long. But basically serotonin is we talk about things like scarcity a lot, and we're just being fed a scarcity sort of model. You need this car, you need this holiday. If you don't have these abs, then you're not going to, that sort of stuff. That stuff goes on all the time. It's, modern marketing wouldn't work without it. So we're getting fed this scarcity model. We're looking at Instagram and we're comparing and despairing all the time. And I think what used to happen is we used to be able to look around in our tribe and we could see who was on the next run up. You might have had a mate that had a bigger house than yours. His dad might have had a better car and his bike was flashier than yours. And you could kind of see the next run up. Think, I'd like to get to that next run. The hassle, particularly with kids now, is they're walking around with the entire ladder in their pocket, and they're looking at it incessantly. And humans don't compare down. We only compare up. All right? We very rarely compare and look at things that we're doing better than. We're only comparing to, and you've got the entire pocket, an entire ladder in your pocket, looking at it and thinking these are people who are on private jets. This guy's got abs. This girl's lips and boobs are bigger than mine. We're constantly got that compare and despair thing going on. And I think that's a wrestle. And one of the things that serotonin does, serotonin is your chemical that says I'm enough. I like being me. It's my pride from inside sort of chemical. And I think I was lacking that. Because I wasn't putting my heart and soul into anything. I wasn't giving everything. I think you got to care and you got to show you care. And I probably didn't do that for a little while because I got to the top of the mountain and went, oh, okay, I've done that. But I think since then I've kind of learnt to enjoy the walk rather than the destination. And I think it sounds really cliche, and I almost it doesn't sound like it. No, but I think we've got to look around a little bit more and enjoy the walk a bit more.
How do you? Obviously, it's a bit easier for you being elder, having experience, but how do you get people to stop this comparison? Like you said, kids now have a world at their phone that they can look at anything and say, that person's on a private jet, I'm not doing this. Or even, everyone in general. It's not just kids.
We're all doing it, man.
Yeah.
I'm doing it too. No. Yeah. But there's a whole bunch. One of the things I love is the concept of having a noise cancelling habit. You get on a plane, you get noise cancelling headphones, you put them on, you can't hear anything else. You can just hear whatever you're putting in there. And one of the things I talk about in Curious Habits is having a noise cancelling habit, something that I can do once that will get rid of a whole bunch of other noise and distractions and things in my world. And even something as simple as when I walk, you both have both been in my house. When you walk in there, I plug my phone in the office, and my phone doesn't go into my house. All right. So that's a noise cancelling habit. When I'm inside, I'm not looking at my phone. I'm not checking Instagram. I'm not looking at LinkedIn. I'm not doing any of that sort of stuff. Because when I go in there, I either want to just be relaxing and watching the footy and doing whatever, or I want to be a husband, or I want to be a dad. All right, and so a noise cancelling habit is putting that phone in your other. 88% of people watch 2 screens at a time. All right, humans aren't designed to do 2 things at once. All right, I read a really cool African proverb the other day that said a man cannot row 2 canoes at one time.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us are 2 canoeing a lot. We're trying.
Two canoeing way too much.
So how do we work out our lives? How do we set up our systems and our habits so that when we are going somewhere, we're going in one canoe and for a certain amount of time, and then we'll jump in the other one when we want to do something else. But I think a lot of us are sticking one foot in 2 canoes, trying to work out, I've got to get to here, I've got to do this, and the more canoes I have, the better I'll be. And we're not designed to do that. If you think about computers, you have these things, computers with 2 and 3 processors in it. They can do a few things at once. We've only got one processor. This brain of ours is pretty old. It's an analog brain living in a digital world. And so we can only do one thing at a time. And I reckon there's some really cool research that we've got to be able to do. Andrew Huberman calls it, who's a neuroscientist, calls it duration, path, and outcome. I'm going to do, for this long, I'm going to do this path and this is the outcome I want to get. And when we can do that and then savor the outcome as well, you can actually sort of split our days up into little chunks where we can just be in the one canoe. Because I think a lot of us are spending it. I really struggle with focus, and I'm working really hard to try and find what solution works for me to focus better. And I think every time you write a book, it's always, there's a little bit of research, but there's a lot of me-search in there. So almost like Stress Teflon was about that. I looked around and went, why are some people thriving and some people don't? And I learned a lot about it.
I would love for you to go into this. So for those who don't know, your first book was Stress Teflon. You were really touted as the stress expert when that book came out. It was all about how to make stress not stick.
Yeah, I still think now, and it's amazing when you come up with these models. Whenever you write a book, you think about a lot of stuff. And the model I came up with, Stress Teflon, is we needed the safety of a tribe. Mm-hmm. So you needed people around you who you love and they love you. You need pride from contribution. You have to do something. You can't just think, I want everything to be great, but I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to do what I've always done and you're going to get what you always got, that old sort of cliches and stuff. But we've got to have pride from contributing. We've got to do something. And we've got to have honest self-awareness. We've got to know, we can't bullshit ourselves because stress will come and bite you in the ass if you're bullshitting yourself. So I think those 3 have stood up. That was 5 or 6 years ago we wrote that book. And I still look at it now and think, those 3 have really, they're still there. They're still solid. They're still safety of a tribe, pride from contributing. We've got to do good shit. And we've got to notice the fact that we're helping and the world's a better. I love the line is the world a better place because you're in it? Is it, Miles?
I hope so.
Yeah, my world's better because I know you too. So and I think there's a lot of people, particularly when they're wrestling and struggling. Like today's Are You OK Day, and there's a lot of people out there that I think if they're really wrestling with themselves and their mental health and they're perhaps not okay, they probably haven't looked around and worked out how the world is a better place because I'm in it. And if the answer's no, and you think about it again, your answer's still no. Get out there and help someone, do something, contribute.
I've thought about those principles so much, and if I ever see someone that's going through a bit of pain, I almost run through those 3 principles, and I'm like, do they have a safety of a tribe? Are they kind of pushing people away, or are they, do they have people and a support system around them? And then I'm like, are they actually contributing to their community, or are they trying to take as much as they can and not getting that fulfillment from contribution? And are they actually doing any reflection or, are they doing any internal realization?
Yeah. You don't have to sit on a yoga cushion and navel gaze and stuff to do that. But just to actually stop and say, okay, what am I thinking? Why am I thinking that? All right, let's ponder some of that. But those sorts of tools, I think they're really simple. We kind of make that shit a bit harder than we need to be able to just stop and say, okay, what am I getting out of doing this?
Do you find a lot of people don't have that safety of a tribe? Do you think that's something that is often missing?
I reckon it would be the contribution to community that would be the least.
The least, you think?
I reckon.
I have no. I'm not too sure.
There's so much entitlement in this world, and so much there's so many selfish people that they're always working out how to get things for themselves, as opposed to understanding the real hack. In my opinion, is contributing to the community and how much fulfillment you can get out of that. But
is it because they don't have an actual proper tribe?
Maybe.
to contribute to?
I
Like,
think
are
that's-
the people just around them just these miscellaneous, like, floaters that aren't really part of their
Maybe.
proper
Yeah.
family? I don't know.
It's a really good question, and there's something that I love evolutionary biology. I just love the way we do shit because cavemen did shit. All right, and I'm talking that's not cavemen, women, whatever. Yeah. But we do stuff because we're biologically ingrained to do that. And one of the things that happens with the stress response, you get adrenaline and cortisol, and we kind of all know a bit about adrenaline and cortisol. But one of the things we don't realize is part of the stress response is actually oxytocin. And oxytocin is like the cuddle hormone. You know, every time I meet you two, I always have a hug, and it's always like, yeah, good to see you, Miles. And you want to touch, and you want to look at someone's eyes, and you want to connect that way. And that gives you a little squirt of oxytocin. It's the thing that babies get when they breastfeed with their mother. It's the thing you get after orgasm. It's the thing that pulls people together. It's your cuddle hormone. It's a love drug. That's actually part of your stress response. All right? And the hassle is that something's happened in the last couple of generations where that thing that's meant to actually things getting really hard, things getting really bad, I want to pull you closer. All right? Is actually starting to go the other way, and it's really scary. We've got to stop, and we've got to work out that, okay, things are getting tough. Are you okay, Day? Things are getting tough. I want to pull the people closer to me. I want to be okay the fact that I'm a bit vulnerable with this, and you know, I want to get that oxytocin to actually pull me closer to people. Just I'm struggling a little bit at the moment. My dad had a heart attack just recently, and we've found out he's now got bowel cancer, and he's not going to be with us for much longer. And there's been a lot of tears, but what I've found is that every single time I get sadder, all I want to do is hug someone. All right, and I've got so many loving, beautiful people in my tribe that are all there to help me, and you know, my wife's away at the moment. She's been away for 6 weeks, so my main person who I have for that isn't here. But I find that I have a good tribe. And I contribute to that tribe. You know, I think one of the things about it too is that we're all a little bit, I don't know, we don't sort of feel like we're as worthy as we really are. And, you know, I'm the prize in friendship. And so are you. It's a prize to have you as my friend. I really love that. Same with you, Sal. All right. And I think we all get a little bit, I'm not good enough and judge ourselves. And no, let's be the prize. Let's, you know, I'm struggling. I really want to hug someone because my dad's really sick and I love my dad and I'm going to miss him. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's okay. That's all right. And we're designed to do that. Something's happened and I don't know what it is. And I think it's probably a shame thing. I think it's probably I'm putting these facades up that we're not doing that anymore and we need to. Because part of the stress response is that we're meant to pull people closer.
We got endless hugs for you, Lukey. We'll hug off camera. We'll hug on camera. But so you made some incredible discoveries, and you know contributed so much to the community with your first book, which was Stress Teflon. You did a second book that was focused around teenagers.
Yeah, that one was hard, and I do a bit of work at schools and. You know, I do a lot of conferences where you're up talking to people and I kind of, every single time I get this knot in my throat and I don't like it, but it's a really cool message. My daughter, she's 20 now, but when she was from the age of like 5, she had a group of 5, a little crew of girls that were just beautiful. They were all gorgeous girls and they were tight for the whole time until they were about 15 or 16 and one of them, Zara had to go to a different school. So she went to a new school and she never quite found her tribe. So she never quite found that safety of a tribe that we talk about. And unfortunately, she slipped into a bit of a hole of depression and got really sad and she took her own life. And it was horrendous, absolutely awful. It was around the same time, remember 13 Reasons Why?
Yeah.
The show on Netflix. It was a really popular show on Netflix. It was a fantastic show and as someone that deals with stress for a living, there was no way my daughter was watching that without me with her and without doing a debrief at the end of it and having a chat and working out what's going on. And so she's at the age that these kids are in the show, and all of a sudden one of her best friends has taken her own life, and it was like, yeah, wow, all right, the stress guru in me just popped to the surface, and all right, all the girls that come into our place, the night Zara died. they all stayed at our place. We had mattresses all over the floor. We woke up at dawn and went down and watched the sun come up and told Zara stories. And there were a ton of Zara stories because she was awesome. And it was just so sad. And about 3 months later, Ali was Zara's best friend. You know, in the group of 5, she was her bestie. And I saw her and she confided in me that she was really struggling, that she was pulling away from the others, and she was really wrestling with anxiety. So I said, look, you know, I know a little bit about this stress stuff. Do you want to write a book with me? And she's a great writer. So we wrote a book called Reset. We can actually get from my website at lukemathers.com.au. It's completely free. You can download it for free. And basically what I got is a teenager's view. I gave her the science and the things that I knew, and she put them into teenage words, and it was just amazing. I learned so much from working with Zara, and we came up with a concept called catch, wait, and reset. And so catch the physical sign that you're feeling stress. With me, that's knots in my stomach. What would yours be? What would yours be, Miles? You scratch your chin?
I'm probably a weird case because I feel like for whatever reason throughout my life I've suppressed a lot of like stress, feelings of stress. So I've always said that I don't get stressed, but then my body maybe breaks out in hives or might have allergy.
Till your bucket's full on.
Yeah.
It's almost a bit like, I think there's a fair few people like that. So you're not on your own there. And I think one of the things about that is we end up with this like low hum of stress all the time that we don't notice when it happens because it's always there. Or a bit like living next to a highway. You don't hear the cars after a while. Right. And I think something we've got to reset properly. We've got to find nature. We've got to chill out. We've got to do things without our phones. And we've got to really work out what it feels like to be quiet and be away from the highway. So then when something stressful happens, those physical signs, those, you know, knots in your stomach, clenching your jaw, you know, tightening of your shoulders, those sorts of things, they're meant to be a cue to get us to get curious. And that's kind of what Ali taught me, that, you know, what would that be? Would you have yours?
We would sit in a wired state for the majority of time. Hey,
I think mine's more pacing. Like the physical aspect of me makes me stand up.
You want to move.
And I want to move.
That makes sense, doesn't it? That's fight or flight.
Yeah, I want to move and I want to not run, but get active enough that I feel like movement is helping me work through whatever is stressing me out at the time, to get forward almost.
Yeah.
Obviously that... Now, when I think about it, makes sense. Hence why
there is a study on that.
Yeah.
There's tons of it.
Yeah.
But the point of catch, wait, and reset is to understand what your physical symptom is that I'm feeling stressed, and use that as your cue to get curious. Yeah. And by cue to get curious, I mean, so I ask wait, and wait stands for what am I thinking. So what am I thinking? What's making me think that? And is it helping? All right. And when we do that, we kind of connect our old emotional brain and our smart new brain, and we kind of put those two together, and that helps. And then the reset part is the same as on your computer, Control Alt Delete. So what can I control? What are my alternatives, and what do I need to delete? And I love that. It's almost a bit like the serenity prayer. I don't know if you know that one, that God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I like the way that Control Alt Delete fits into that a little bit, because we spend a lot of time worrying about stuff we can't control. And the moment we can just say, okay, I just reset that. Control Alt Delete. I'm wasting no time worrying about something I can't control.
Such a good concept. So you wrote Reset, brought that out, and then the latest book that you've brought out is called Curious Habits. So talk us through, you know, what you were thinking and your evolution in your thinking which led you to Curious Habits, and what Curious Habits is all about.
Curious Habits was probably born from disappointment and pissing myself off from not being able to change habits that, you know, just weren't serving me. So what am I doing? Like I was one of these dudes that always wrestled with weight. I'd run and train, and, you know, my wife calls me Action Man. I just never sit still, a bit like yourself, Sal, a bit like both of you. You know, don't sit still very well, and always moving. But I was always, you know, 15, 20 kilos overweight. And, you know, and a lot of it was habit. So whenever I would get frustrated, bored, annoyed, pick whatever emotion you want that's not desirable, where's the fridge? Give me chocolate, all of that sort of stuff. And it was a curious habit. So what I was after was that instant gratification of food whenever something was happening that wasn't quite going my way. And the moment I kind of got really curious about that and used those cues that would say, okay, this would normally send me to the fridge. What are my alternatives here? Going to the fridge wasn't helping me. We talked about being an optometrist, and I've asked which one's clearer, this one or that one, a million times. I used to get I was that boss that would like just, if it's busy, we'll just go faster. We'll just go harder. We'll just work harder. That was my default. And worked out that by about 2 or 3 in the afternoon, I was just frazzled. I was like anxious. I was just wound up. And my way of unwinding was to drink Pepsi Max and eat chocolate chip cookies. All right? Yeah, just back up for a little minute. Okay, I'm feeling anxious. I'm marinating in cortisol. Let's throw sugar and caffeine on there. See how that goes. You know what I mean? It's never going to work. And so basically what happened is my pants didn't fit anymore and I had acid reflux all the time. So it wasn't doing me any favors, but it had become my habit. It had become my default. So it's just what I did. And then I sort of stopped. Then I spoke to a friend of mine who's a breath coach. And I said, I feel like this at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and all I want to do is eat chocolate chip cookies and drink Pepsi Max. And he said, well, why don't you just lie down on your room, breathe into your diaphragm, breathe into your stomach for a bit, and then notice the fact of how you feel afterwards. And it took maybe a week, if that. All I did was I'd lie on the ground and I'd put my phone on my stomach and I'd feel the phone lifting up and down. Because if you breathe into your diaphragm, do you want me to nerd out?
Yeah.
How much do we want to nerd out in this podcast?
As much as you can.
Okay, well, you got 610 muscles in your body, all right? One of them has a direct link to your hypothalamus. And your hypothalamus is like the EA of your brain. It controls your heart rate, it controls your blood pressure, it controls your body temperature, it controls all of those things. And your diaphragm is linked directly to that by your vagus nerve, all right? And 80% of that nerve is actually afferent. So it means it's going from your body to your brain, all right? So by breathing into your diaphragm deliberately, that basically sends a message to your brain to say, no, everything's cool, calm the farm, we're all okay. So instead of so basically what I did is I had a habit loop that was Pepsi Max and chocolate chip cookies, wasn't serving me, and I swapped that to I would lie on the ground and I'd breathe into my stomach. So you breathe as if you've got a balloon in your stomach and you're just blowing the balloon up and then letting it out. And then I'd stand up and go, okay, how do I feel now? I feel great. So I savoured the fact I felt so much better at that, and that reinforced that pathway. And eventually it turned into, okay, I'm feeling frazzled, I'm feeling agitated, I'm feeling twitchy, and like you'd have to go and move cell. My response to that was I'm just going to take 2 minutes, I'm going to sort my shit out, and I'm going to relax. And those 2 minutes then just turned into bliss and like, oh, that's awesome. And then that's not a hard. If I had have tried to, I'm not going to eat chocolate chip cookies and I'm not going to drink Pepsi Max, I'd be kind of pushing against it the whole time. But when you actually work out what do I want to get, now you guys are both good at jiu-jitsu. It's almost doing jiu-jitsu with your habits. It's almost saying, okay, I'm going to use that energy of that to take me somewhere else. And that's kind of what I did with my habits. And so I kind of worked out what things were serving me, what was I trying to get out of it, and was I actually getting that? And then once you actually work that out, then you change because you want to change and not because you had to. And that made a massive amount of difference for me. And I think, some of it's about things like health and fitness, some of it's about, running businesses, and some of it's about just to get clear on what your thought habits are. But basically all I did was swap chocolate chip cookies and Pepsi Max for belly breathing. Mm-hmm. And what I wanted was calm. I was trying to get it with sugar and caffeine. It wasn't working. Let's swap and let's get it from breathing and getting my hypothalamus to actually do what I want it to do.
I think it was you that told me that if you want to build a new habit, you need to replace an old habit with something new.
Yeah, the world hates a vacuum. So we can't just say I'm going to stop doing that. You're going to have those same cues come up. And I love the sort of combination of triggers and cues. When people talk about it's a cue for anxiety or a trigger for anxiety. One of the things you hear kids say a lot is, oh, that triggers my anxiety. You've heard that expression a few times. I hate that expression. Absolutely hate it. One, when you pull a trigger on a gun, you don't have any control over where that bullet goes after that, do you? It's gone. All right, wherever you pulled the trigger, it's gone. And we kind of use things as triggers. Oh, that person really triggers me because they said this. Well, I think we've got to change that. And we've got to use that as a cue to get curious. And that's where the kind of catch, wait, and reset part comes into it. That we're going to use those things as my cue to sort of stop and say, what am I thinking here and what are my alternatives? And when we do that, we can then choose where we go next, rather than having a trigger that just sends me down this, rabbit hole of anxiety. To actually stop, and it's called, psychologists would call it cognitive behavioral therapy, but just to be able to stop and say, okay, I'm going to choose what I'm going to do deliberately from now on. I think it's a really powerful thing to swap triggers for cues.
With how you do things, because me and Miles have had the pleasure of seeing you and working with you to help us through multiple different things, but you obviously don't point to flaws, and we're all flawed as human. You don't say, you're doing this wrong, do this. You obviously try to get the person to identify themselves where they may be feeling not great, where they may see improvement, and then move towards that improvement. Tell us how you go through that process, because I know a lot of people, us included, often can become frustrated with, I'm sure Miles gets frustrated with me and vice versa, and staff and friends and family, and you're often wanting to help them by saying, hey, do this. But the natural reaction of you saying anything, kids included, like do this, is no, fuck off. I'm going to do that, which never ends up working well for anyone, because you actually come to it from a place of good intention, but it leads to the person pushing you away, thinking that you're trying to change or manipulate or whatever the word may be, when you really aren't. You're just noticing something that could help them improve in a way that's maybe positive to them, but because of how you've gone about it, and I've been guilty of it, has backfired. But the way I've seen you go about it often really helps people. Tell us about your process of making people look towards themselves and go forward from there.
Literally what we just did. Finding out the three things that I wanted to be.
We were just talking about it before as well.
There's a few things there's a whole bunch of questions in that question. I reckon probably the biggest one, particularly if you're a leader in a business, I think you've got to be able to tame your advice monster. All right. I think we all have this tendency to sort of, someone comes to you with a problem, particularly if you're the leader, and they say, oh, I don't know what to do here. And you go, just do this. All right. Yeah, cool. Might work, might not. But to sort of be able to stop and just stay curious for a little bit longer, to sort of say, okay, well, what do you think the answer might be? What are some of your alternatives here? How does that play forward doing that? And what we end up doing, and particularly as a coach, and I love coaching. Coaching's just, the world could be on fire, and if I'm in a coaching session with someone, the only person I care about is them. And for someone that really wants focus, I love it. So I actually will be completely present. Like I've had coaching session with both of you two, and you're just completely present in the moment, which is great. But I think we've got to be able to sort of just ask the questions and let people find their way there, rather than letting the advice monster point them in the right direction. I think that's probably the key with that, to sort of find out where they want to go and what they want to do, and just be that person that can tweak if it starts going offline. I reckon as a leader, that's what our job should be more as a coach rather than as a director, to be able to coach people to get
like a micromanager.
That's one of the curious habits we talk about in the books, is micromanaging. And at the start, and it's how habits work too. At the start, micromanaging is really good because you're helping that person get the skills that they need. When does that stop being beneficial? And what we've got to do is work out, okay, well, it was beneficial for this first little bit. Now I need to turn more into that. And the hassle is we stay in those same loops. We stay in those same habit loops, and we've got to learn to be able to evolve and change as the people we're working with change.
I grew up with my grandparents, who are European, very superstitious at the time, very religious. And I wonder if your family was at all similar in this instance, Cell, where my grandma would say that speaking to yourself, like, you're crazy if you speak to yourself. So like if you if you talk to yourself, you're going crazy. So if she ever saw me sort of like muttering some words or something, but not to anyone, she'd be like, stop talking to yourself, you're going to go crazy. But now we're encouraging people
to speak
to yourself and self-reflect and have these internal conversations. How important is it for us to have these internal conversations? But then number two, understand what we are actually saying to ourselves and how important that is on our confidence and self-esteem and all those sorts of things?
Yeah, it's a cracking question, and it was a really leading question. Thanks, mate. It's a nice little T-ball softball for me there. But one of the big things I love to do in my coaching practice is I want to get really clear about who's talking. We've got constant dialogue going on in our head, no matter what grandma says, she's wrong. We've always got there's a narrator in our head, and it's almost like those two old grumpy bastards, Slater and Waldorf from the Muppets, those two old just heckling up from the top seats. Because our brain can actually think at about 600 words a minute. All right, so about 600 words a minute, we've got this stuff going on. All right, we can speak, most people speak at about 120 words a minute. You think about like an auctioneer, they'll speak at about 220. Sell, blah, 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 blah. It sounds like they're rattling off. They're at 220 words a minute. So our brains actually think more than twice as fast as that. All right. So there's a lot of words that we might even be saying or hearing that we're filling in gaps.
Yep.
All right. And one of the things I like to do in my coaching practice is almost goes back to those old cartoons from the 80s and 90s where the Homer Simpson might have a devil on one shoulder and an angel on the other. And they both sound the same, but they're both going to be saying very different stories. And I like to help people get really clear about whether they're angels talking or they're devils talking. So we do this thing called Finding Carlos, which is finding the better version of you. And so you'll come up with 3 or 4 characteristics of what the best version of you looks like. Mine is, I've changed mine recently. It used to be curious, creative, and generous. And the best version of me was curious, creative, and generous. So how do I get to be curious and creative and generous wherever I could? Recently, I've changed it because I always want one of these to be something I'm aspiring to. One of them I'm kind of, want to work hard. And one thing I'm trying to do is be more present. I want to be, if I'm in a room, I want to be in a room.
Yeah.
Us too. Did you do this workshop with Luke?
Yeah. I was able to do it a while ago.
Do you remember what your...
Yeah, and I was literally, we were just talking about it before, but it was kind of close to Luke's, which was curious, caring, and adventurous. Were my ones.
Mine was brave, caring, and present. Yeah, and present was my aspiring one.
Yeah.
I think I have to really watch myself when I'm doing these programs and stuff, when we're doing them in workshops, that I don't plant too much in the other person, because it's really easy to do that. But we have a void in our society at the moment of being able to focus. If you ever want to read a really good book, Stolen Focus by Johann Hari is a fantastic book. And it's about how we're losing the ability to sort of stay where we are. Another great old Chinese expression of be where your feet are. And I love that too, is I'm here. And at the moment I'm here talking to you two, which I love talking to you two all the time. But I'm not thinking about anything else, and I'm completely present. And how often are we completely present in what we're doing, or are we getting distracted? And
it's the hardest one. It's by far for me the hardest one. I should change mine to present, because it is the one for
never one to plant these things.
Yeah, exactly. But from an aspirational perspective, it is 100% the hardest one to achieve, particularly in this time of life. Be it the aspect of technology, be it the aspect of multiple, be it businesses going on. Me and Miles were talking about it before. We would probably have upwards of 100 WhatsApp chats. And within each one of those chats, not for whatever reason, you may be like the person that gets asked question after question after question after question across so many different things. And that's just on that platform. Yeah. And then you go to email. Then you go to messages.
Probably get 400, 500 emails a day.
Yeah, and it just keeps going. And then it's like it almost feels like there's no escape from it. So like you said, the big reason we wanted to get back to this podcast was because it felt like that was the 1 hour we could be present with a guest or each other or whatever it may be, because you were forced to be, and we almost needed that, like to be able to shut that door and be able to get here. Even previously, before the podcast, was in the office, and even that was like you'd look out through the glass door and just be like, oh man, what's going on? Like that's not doing this or this, and then you lose that presence. So it's something that every day is a battle with that.
I realized the only time that I actually prior to doing this workshop and bringing it to the forefront of my mind with Luke, thought about being present was when we have a fighter in the cage. And I stole this concept from watching Trevor Whitman with Rose Namajunas, where she would stand in the cage, he would stand beside the cage, and he'd be like, cool, I want you to feel your toes. Can you feel your toes? Cool. Can you feel your fingers? Yep. You move everything? Yep. Okay. You're here. You can hear my voice. And she just like drown out all the sounds of the crowd and everything and just become present. And now anytime that I'm cornering a fighter and they go into the cage, I do the same thing. Can you feel your toes? Yep. You hear my voice? Like,
be where your feet are.
Yep. Be where your feet are. That's just such a cool saying.
Yeah, it is
steal
really
that
cool.
one.
Steal away. Yeah. It's not mine, so you're more than welcome to it. But we're not doing it. And we're particularly, one of the things, I did a talk at Miles' old school. Miles introduced me to the new principal at his school. And I went and did a talk for the parents there about how to, I told her to finding focus in an age of distraction, all right, and to give them some tools that they can use. And how do I set up my environment so it's easier to stay focused? And we can do that. Okay, what am I being aware of my cues that are dragging me, my triggers that are dragging me away from what I want to focus on? I love the idea of deliberate procrastination. All right, I'm getting distracted here. Okay, I'm going to distract myself on purpose. I'm going to do this for 2 minutes and then I'm going to come back to what I'm doing, rather than canoeing and sort of trying to half be distracted and half do my work for 4 hours, because we can do that easily. You can easily spend 4 hours half doing your work. Whereas if you paddle one canoe and that's the canoe I'm working on, and then I'm going to work on this other one for a bit, we'll actually get a shitload more done.
How do you identify whether it's, you just trying to self-sabotage and like almost trying to distract yourself because you don't want to do the job, as opposed to, I need to identify in myself right now that my body is telling me that I need to take a break.
Yeah.
And it's, I'm getting distracted here.
That's the catch, weight and reset part of it too, that we can use that same thing. And one of the hassles when you have that low hum, like you were talking about before, that living next to a highway, is that you're not hearing those cues anymore. All right. So we've got to make sure we kind of tune our hearing in for them a little bit to be able to sort of stop and say, okay, I'm going to do that. And just little things like when you go and have lunch, go and have lunch outside, go and look at trees, leave your phone away. Don't take your phone with you when you go for lunch. When you go for lunch, when you're having a break, have a break. They did some really cool research at University of Tel Aviv, and they got people to do a really difficult cognitive task. And once they got to the point where their brain was full and, I need a break, they said, okay, you go have a break. You guys go for a walk around the block, go walk around that forest there for a little while, and then we'll come back and we'll do some more. The other ones, they got to scroll on Facebook and then come back and then go back into the task. They could measure how well they did on their really difficult cognitive task, and they could then see when they wanted to quit again. All right. And the ones that scrolled on Facebook or Instagram, they didn't do as well when they came back. So it was equivalent to having a 20% decrease in IQ. So it was 20-point decrease in IQ. All right. And they quit way quicker. All right. So one thing I think we've got to be able to do is reset on purpose, to actually deliberately do the thing that's actually going to calm us down and empty our brain a little bit and give us some room to sort of fill it back up again with whatever we're doing. Because if we're not emptying that bucket, we're constantly full, and we're in two canoes.
The two canoe thing.
I don't like talking about the two canoes because I'm like, oh fuck.
But one of the things about
we've got about 5 canoes right now.
But one of the things about it is, if we get to that point where we know we can only paddle one canoe, it just takes one sentence. Just say to yourself, okay, what canoe am I going to paddle? How long am I going to, duration, path, outcome. How long am I going to paddle this for? Where am I going and what do I want to get out of this? Let's just paddle this canoe.
Yep.
I had to do a proposal for a super company that I'm doing some work with. And I had probably 15 minutes before I had to come here to do this podcast.
Yep.
And it was awesome because I only had 15 minutes. Cool, I've got to do it. Duration, path, outcome. Boom, boom, boom. Wrote the proposal, sent it off. You bet, done. Whereas I could have farted around with that for 2 hours.
Yep.
All right, and it might have been 2% better. Might have been worse if I had farted around for 2 hours. But when I went in one canoe for duration, path, and outcome, I'm going to get this proposal done in the next 15 minutes, and I'm going to send it off. It got done.
Yeah. So interesting.
One canoe.
I think the more that Sel and I become experienced with things and go through this business journey is having that same thought process. I mean, prior, we might be a bit more more like perfectionists, spend so much time on doing things to try and get that 1 or 2% extra.
Yeah.
But then at the end of the day, a lot of the time, people don't even recognize that 2% extra. They don't care.
Yeah.
They would get the same value out of whatever you're producing if you just got it done quicker, and maybe even more value because they got it quicker.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not that we're compromising quality. I think as you get better and more experienced at something, your quality just naturally gets better quicker anyway. But also just understanding when you should just be consistently putting something out quickly to get it done, as opposed to like sitting on it for periods of time to make it more perfect.
Well, perfectionism, there's actually a chapter in Curious Habits about perfectionism, and it's not something I've ever had a real problem with, to tell the truth, but I've looked around and a lot of people do.
You always say it about us.
Well, I massively
you used
say,
to say
it about you.
me a lot. Yeah.
You can definitely spend, it's that 80-20 principle, that Pareto principle, that you can get it 80% done in 20% of the time. So just do that.
Yeah.
But I love Brené Brown's work around this. She's a psychologist from University of Houston, and she refers to perfectionism as carrying a 20-ton shield. If I can make everything perfect, if I can, she deals a lot with women as well, and she said if I can look perfect, be perfect, have everything absolutely perfect, and don't let them see you sweat, then you're going to be okay. And it's just not the way it is.
Yeah.
All right, you're not okay just because you've got everything perfect. It's an illusion. So why don't we start off with be okay? Why don't we just, our base from where we're starting is I'm okay. Yeah. I'm going to get this done. I'm going to put it out and I'm going to learn and I'm going to refine it if I need to down the track. But I'm going to do my best I can with what I got.
I was curious about, because in this podcast world, and then often hearing about platforms like BetterHelp, where people are able to now go online, talk to a psychologist, talk to someone to get advice and the likes of that type of stuff. I believe, particularly for men, there was such a massive stigma about you saying, I'm going to see a psychologist. I've told people that I'm coming to see you, and they've just been shocked. Like, they've just been like, what are you going to see someone about? I'm like, just to get better, clear my head, do this. And
I love the fact I'm not a psychologist.
Yeah.
So, which is actually, I used to have imposter syndrome is another one we talk about in the book as well. I used to have a real imposter syndrome about that I'm helping people with their mindsets. I'm helping people, with their mental health. And, I'm a mental health first aid instructor and stuff. So I teach people how to do that.
Yeah.
But it's a weird concept, isn't it?
Yeah.
That if we wanted to get better at jiu-jitsu, we'd get a coach to teach us. If we want to get better at our marriage, we should get a coach to teach us. If we want to get better at how we lead teams, we should get a coach to teach us. Someone else has done it better than I can do in the past, and someone else will give me another option of what I can do. If you've got a good coach, they're not going to tell you what to do. They're going to help you find what to do, and they're going to help you experiment and look at something. And if that didn't work, cool. It doesn't mean I'm shit. It just means that didn't work. I love the idea that action gives you answers. Mm-hmm. So let's try something. Let's do that. We'll see how that works. And the hassle is we get stuck in those same ruts, those same habits, and there's no benefit to it, but we're still doing the same thing over and over. So how do we step out of that? And one of the ways you step out of it is to get a coach, and a coach can actually help you with that. And it works really well. And the coach doesn't necessarily have. I coach a lot of people that are way better at so many more things than I am. But all I help them is to find another way to look at things. And it's really weird that I spend all these years asking people which one's clearer, number one or number two, and now I kind of do that in a different way.
It's amazing. The one thing that I've got so much value from you is finding gratitude. And I know that you talk about gratitude a lot, and you talk about the gap in the gain and just reframing that thought process. Can you tell us a little bit about that theory? Yeah,
I love The Gap and the Gain. It's great. It's a great book by Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy called The Gap and the Gain. And the concept, if you imagine a continuum along the way, and here's where you were, here's the ideal version of you. All of us live somewhere along that continuum. And there's a gap between where we are and where we want to be. And most of us live in that gap, that between where I am and where I want to be. And I guess part of what we wanted to do is to narrow that gap. Right, and what we do is we build on that with gratitude. So what are the lessons I've learned along the way that are actually helping me here? And so build on gratitude. If you imagine GAP, G-A-P, is gratitude, acceptance, and purpose. So if I can have gratitude for the things I've learned and all the things that I've done and all of the struggles I've had, acceptance that this is where I am. I'm here now, right here in my shoes. This is where I am, and we can accept that, but acceptance from a place of I can still thrive and I can still do better. and having a purpose of what that looks like. And I reckon if we do that, then the gap between, the you now and the you want to be actually gets smaller. But it's not a apathy and I'm not going to change. It's I still want to thrive and I still want to get better, but I'm accepting that I'm here now and I'm going to go from here. I'm going to build on what I've learned in the past.
And it's about appreciating how far you've come, right? Because it's like we all look at that gain and we all look at like where we want to be, but we don't actually sit in the present and go, well, fuck, look how far I've actually come.
Yeah.
And that's where I can build that gratitude from.
Have you read the last chapter in Curious Habits?
No? Don't put me on the spot like that.
On the spot. But the last chapter, a friend of mine, Cam Schwab, used to be a CEO of a few AFL teams. Really talented dude. I've learnt so much about being a coach and leading and stuff from Cam. And he gave me a thought experiment, which was really cool. And I'll let you guys have a think about this for a tick. Is that the thought experiment is I want you to go half a lifetime ago. Go back half a lifetime ago. So for me, that's 25-year-old Luke. And we've all got that old cliche of what advice would you give the younger version of yourself? We've heard that a million times. Cam had a different take on it. He said, what would you go back and thank 25-year-old you for? All right. And I'd go back and thank 25-year-old me for, getting off the cones and stopping smoking drugs because I turned my brain into mush and sorted my mental health out again, which was great. I'd thank him for exercising and training and staying fit and healthy. I'd thank him for looking after, prioritising his marriage when his marriage looked like it wasn't going to be good. I'd really thank him for doing IVF and having his daughter who he loves to bits. And all of the things that you go back and thank that half a lifetime ago version of you. Think, wow, I really thank 25-year-old me for working really hard at some of the things I had to do and doing the hard things to do when the hard thing was the right thing to do, and to putting in the effort and to, really working hard. So you think about and go back, and it's a really cool thought experiment. Even pause the podcast for a moment and do it yourself now. And then the second part of the experiment is I want you to go the same amount of time ahead. So that's like 75-year-old me. What would he come back and thank me for now? He'd thank me for staying fit. He'd thank me for laying off the carbs and looking after his brain and eating food that's good for your brain. He'd thank me for, doing Pilates and being kind to my knees. He'd thank me for still looking after my wife and still looking at her like she's the most beautiful woman in the world, which she is to me. And all of those things, what would that future version of you thank you for now? Would he thank you for drinking 20 cans and eating shit food and all of that sort of stuff? No, probably not. And so it's a really cool thought experiment to sort of be grateful for the past and then look at what the future version. I think finding Carlos, when we come up with the best version of you, I think that does that. The best version of me is going to be curious, creative and present. And the more curious, creative and present I can be, I think 75-year-old me is going to be proud of me.
It's unbelievable. And tell the audience about finding Carlos and what Carlos would do that Luke doesn't do.
It's kind of back to that angel and the devil on the shoulder. And I guess, Luke can tend to procrastinate a little bit. Luke can put things off. If I don't know quite how to do something, I just won't do it. Luke's perhaps not as comfortable with discomfort, whereas Carlos will just give it a crack and get in there and do it and mess some shit up, but that's okay. And just get it done is probably the biggest difference between the two of them. And so I know when I'm starting to talk myself out of things, I kind of call him Little Luke, and I'm really, really clear about what Little Luke sounds like. And he's always over my left shoulder, and he's this little pigeon-toed kid from Nerang that couldn't read until grade 9. And it was always that kid that had to work harder than everyone else to get to being mediocre. And I'm okay with him now. He used to have that little imposter syndrome and stuff with him, but he gets heard, and I don't push him away, but he doesn't get a say in what I do anymore. All right, but once we're clear about what Little Luke sounds like and then what Carlos sounds like, Carlos I go with. Little Luke I acknowledge him, say thanks mate. I'm not going to push that back and pretend it's not there. I'm going to hear it, but I'm going to go with what Carlos says.
Do you think everyone's carrying obviously that kid with them? Doesn't matter how old you get. There's like certain things when you're a child that just stay with you.
Yeah.
Like they're just ingrained in your DNA that you can't ignore it. That was your past. That was your history of who you've become. Some people obviously like live with it. Like they still hold it. Like you I'm sure you would spot this all the time. You can see someone's insecurities a mile away.
We've all got them.
We do.
Sure.
We all do. You're not human if you don't. But some people then try to mask it with bravado or ego, being really loud or flashy or doing all these different types of things.
They become destructive. Hey?
Yeah, and you think, I don't know whether they genuinely think that the other people around them in the world can't see that they're doing that. So they've disguised themselves, or they've like put this mask on and they're like, no, I can tell that my previous self was like this and this is why I'm behaving like that. But I think it's probably the most obvious thing that becomes even more obvious as you get older, like that person's dealing with something and they're doing this to try and move away from that. How do you, like, I wouldn't even know.
Again, it fits into that catch, wait and reset.
Yeah.
It fits into the same model of that. I love the analogy, and I talk about it in Curious Habits as well, that we live on the Gold Coast, and between the Gold Coast and Brisbane is the M1. And for those that don't live around here, it's like a behemoth of a road. It's like about 8 lanes each way. It's huge. But as you drive into Brisbane, there's a bit of an area just north of Dreamworld. I don't know if you know this bit. That there's another little road that Roly-Poly Hills. It's a little 2-lane road that runs next to the M1.
Near Pimpama.
Yeah. That road used to be the M1.
Yeah.
When I used to go to university back in the late 80s, that was the road we drove on to get to university. And what Main Roads and the council have done is build this behemoth next to it. And I think those little version, that little Luke, that little pigeon-toed kid from Nerang, he's on that old M1. He's still there. And the old M1's always going to be there. Those ways of thinking that, you know, I'm not this or I'm that. And those little unhelpful ways of thinking are always still going to be there. But if we can have that awareness to understand I'm on the little M1 now, this is my way of thinking from when I was a kid. Once you have the awareness of that, you don't have to force yourself to step off it. It's just the awareness. And okay, cool. There's the motorway over there. That's the way I want to go.
That awareness is the key. Hey, it's just like these people have not done enough self-reflection. They don't do any self-reflection, so they don't know sort of like who they are and how they're communicating, and like
that sounds. It doesn't have to be as I don't know, ethereal and up there and all woo-woo about it. It's just like, yeah, fuck, that's what that little shit version of me would say. That's okay.
What was your Carlos called? Do you remember?
Essie.
Essie?
Yeah.
Was your
Yeah, it was my
grandfather or mother's name?
Grandmother's middle name.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And how?
What was yours?
Mine was Tyler from Fight Club.
I actually one of the things we do with Finding
Tyler
Carlos is and you can actually download that. There's a worksheet on this on my website as well. You can actually download the worksheet for Finding Carlos and do it yourself. But it's a good thing to do with a friend. But when I do it with Miles, he's one of the person. You have this like pretend dinner party that you have, and you invite someone from your tribe, someone famous, someone fictional, and someone from the past. Yeah. All right, and we write down all the characteristics of all those different people, and one of the ones
that you admire about them.
Characteristics you admire about it. And Miles was Tyler Durden from Fight Club, and I watched the movie recently, and I'm really, really disturbed.
I need to watch it again.
Yeah, it's bad.
It was one of those moments where, and this is a bad trait of mine. I have a terrible memory, but I try not to tell myself that as much anymore from working with you, and because then I kind of start believing it and then it becomes exactly. I'm
working on improving my memory.
Correct. But when you get put on the spot, sometimes I just go blank. Yeah. So Luke's like, "Who's a fictional character?"
Yeah, someone from a book or a movie.
Yeah, and that you admire. I was like, I literally, I don't know why, but Tyler Durden from Fight Club was the only thing that kept coming to the surface. And I don't know why.
Actually, I quoted him earlier in this podcast, buying shit we don't need with money we can't afford to impress people we don't like. Legit. That was a Tyler Durden. That was a Tyler Durden quote.
Maybe that subconsciously stuck with me.
True, it was too.
I couldn't think of anyone else. So I just committed to that. Yeah. But I need to watch Fight Club again.
Yeah, it's an out there movie.
Yeah.
It's a really disturbing movie. But I did mine, and mine was Sandra Bullock in The Blind Side.
Yeah.
I loved her character in that. She didn't give a shit about what anyone else thought. She did what she thought was right. She was caring, she was giving, she was curious about finding new ways to do stuff. And whatever she did 100%. And I loved her character in that.
That's amazing.
So it's a matter of finding, what the best version of you looks like and doing whatever you can to turn up as that person as often as you can.
Lukey, a part of this podcast that Sel's introduced at the end is that we ask someone that is familiar with you to ask you a question. I don't know if you've got one, Sel?
No, I was hoping you did.
Yeah, cool. I've got one.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Holly asked the question, actually.
Oh, sweet.
Because I told her that you'd
one.
be on.
Okay.
And
should I be nervous?
no, not at all. No, it's simple question, but it's a good one. It's because she knows how many successful people you continue to work with and to coach, and you're surrounded by during your conferences and your speaking tours and all these sorts of things. And she just wanted to know, is there some common things that each of these successful people have, which you've been able to sort of identify and pull apart? Are there some common themes that you're seeing between all of these successful people and how they are able to sort of, live in balance and harmonious balance and achieve success and all these sorts of things? And then the second part of that is there such thing as balance?
We'll go the first part first. And I think the people that can maintain success for a long time have that balance. I'd like to think they maintain curiosity and the ability to change and not get stuck in habits that aren't serving them. It's a really. I'm thinking about a lot of the different people along those lines. With the criteria that Holly was saying, and they're all very, very different personalities and have different priorities and stuff. But I guess the ability to change, I think that's massive. I think adaptable. That's really understand. To be able to be adaptable and change, and to be able to move with the way the times change, I think is really important. And that's probably one of the really key things I like people to get out of Curious Habits, to be able to sort of say that I have the ability to change. A lot of people sort of wrongly suggest that I'm this and this is how I am and I'm not going to ever change. And there's some really cool work at Harvard by a guy called Dan Gilbert. And one of the quotes he said was that humans are mistakenly think we're finished products when we're actually works in progress. Mm-hmm. And we're all works in progress. And the things that we are now, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have thought I'd be doing what I'm doing now. And God knows what I'm going to be doing in 10 years' time. But I know if I stay curious, creative and present, whatever it is going to be pretty good fun.
Mm-hmm. And then we literally just had Jesse Williams on, who was an NFL player who's in the Super Bowl, and he spoke about balance and basically tore it to shreds and said there's no such thing as balance. And I'm someone who's said that a lot too, and Sel too. What's your take on it?
I think balance is when you have enough energy for all the different parts of your life that need it. If you have all the energy, and you don't split it up in time, don't split it up in money. If you've got energy for all the different things in your life that are important, I think you have balance. But I think one of the things, going back to what we talk about, we can kind of look at success and think, I want to be successful, and we put it on top of just results. We put it on top of money. All right, and I think we've got to move money to the side. Money's part of it, and you want to have successful. You want to have, I wanted all my Specsavers practices to be really, really successful. But you also need tribes. You also need relationships. And then balance is kind of fills it in. So if we have, results and tribes and then plus or minus balance, I think that's where our success pyramid comes from. Mm-hmm. And then you have success then. Whether it's success in billions or something probably doesn't really matter. If you have all of those three, whatever the KPIs on it aren't probably quite so important.
Amazing. Are there any messages you want to share for, any final messages? Tell people where they can find you, if they want to learn more about you, if they want to book you for speaking tours, if they want to do workshops and team workshops and all these sorts of things.
You can find me at lukemathers.com.au. I'm not the biggest social media person in the world, so probably don't go looking there. I've had people like Miles try and help me, and it just doesn't. It's not something that sits well with me, and that's okay. If nothing else, I'm authentic, so let's stick with that. lukemathers.com.au is probably the best way to find. There's lots of stuff on there for free that you can download, a couple of books and things like that for free. I reckon if I could give one piece of advice, it would be to just stay curious. Just to look at what am I getting out of certain things? How is that helping me? How am I serving the world? Is the world a better place because I'm in it? Those sorts of questions. And I think today's Are You OK Day as well, which we touched on a little bit earlier. And I think one of the things we should start asking questions, both of ourselves and other people, and use questions that are what and how. We often ask why questions, and I think why questions can often be a little bit judgy. You know, what am I going to do that's going to help this? How can I change this to be a little bit different? Those sort of open-ended questions for people. I think those sorts of things can help us all get a little bit more curious.
Thanks, brother. So
Love
good
you,
having
Lukey.
you on, man.
Pleasure, man. It's good to see you both.
We'll get you back on, keep talking, because I think it's just so much value for people. So keep doing amazing things. The world is better for having you in it.
You too, boss. You too, fellas.
See you soon.
Thanks,
Cheers.
man.